10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 451. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 451 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you're all doing well out there. Hope you got a chance to listen to the first in our series this month. This week, we are going to be taking a look at another classic jazz standard, which is Tangerine, one of my favorite tunes. And we're going to be taking a look at that exact same modulation that we looked at last week over Cole Porter's I Love You. And there's actually a ton of congruity here because it's actually in the same key. You know, just like a lot of tunes, this is played in a variety of different keys, but we might as well take it in concert F, just like we did with I Love You. And it's interesting, right? There's some tunes where there's like a really accepted key. So a tune like I Love You generally is gonna be played in concert F, like 99% of the time. Of course, if you're playing with a vocalist, it's very, very common to change the key to fit their voice. But it's just a tune where sort of the accepted key is F, basically. And there's lots of tunes like that where you don't even have to ask the question before you start playing it. Hey, what key are we doing this in? But a tune like Tangerine and some of these more traditional tunes, very, very often people will play it in whatever key they like to play it in. So there's a little bit less of an accepted key. And when you go out and you find recordings of these tunes, you'll notice that it's kind of all over the map. In fact, I want you to try that. Go search for a bunch of different versions of I Love You and sort of notice how many people actually played an F. Then go out and search for a bunch of versions of Tangerine and notice that people are going to play it in all kinds of different keys. They're going to play it in F. They're going to play it in D flat. They're going to play it in C. You can basically find a version of it in almost every key. So it's just something interesting that as you get more experience with jazz and as you learn more tunes, you start to understand that there are tunes where the key is kind of movable and you should definitely check with the musicians that you're playing with before you start. And then there are tunes that generally most of the time, it's just like, okay, you know, unless there's some reason to move this key, like for a vocalist, it's basically just played in this key all the time. And that's a really interesting difference and something that sort of you start to realize the more experience that you have with this music. But anyway, we are going to be looking at Tangerine, and it is in the key of F. And actually, it has that exact same modulation to the key of A major, just like I Love You, and it happens in the exact same place in the form, right? So we're talking about a modulation from this key up to this key. Hear that again. Very interesting, right? Very unique sounding. And I hope after a week of working on I Love You, you're starting to wrap your ears around that modulation. Because we're going to look at it again this week, okay? So Tangerine is another 32-bar form, key of concert F. And I think about the form as A, B, A, C. But I want you to notice that the modulation happens in the exact same place, right? Which is measure 12 going into measure 13. So if we play Tangerine from the beginning, I want you to see if you can hear when that modulation happens. And I'm sure you'll be much more prone to hearing it after working on I Love You for a whole week. So here we go from the top. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. can hear it, right? Now, something that's often thrown around in the jazz world or in music in general as another way to recognize when something big is happening, just like sort of another cue that you can use for yourself that will help you to hear things, is to think about when the color of the tune changes. And you can literally think about colors if you want. So, what's the first color that pops into your head when you hear, like, and it's just arbitrary, just like whatever color your brain sees. Then does that color that your brain sees change when you go from, now this might not click for all of you, but for a small portion of you out there, or maybe a not so small portion of you out there, you'll finally understand concretely how your brain sort of perceives a difference in tonality of what key you're in, right? I know when somebody first mentioned this to me, and I felt like I didn't have very strong ears. Well, I didn't have very strong ears when I was younger. Then somebody explained this whole color thing to me, and my brain did actually see a different color. And it really unlocked some ways of hearing things. And it made me rely on my ears a little bit more and trust my ears a little bit more, because I understood, oh, my ears were actually perceiving this. It only came to light when I heard that, when I heard it put into the terms of those colors, basically. Okay. All right. So what I've got for you this week, you're going to learn the melody. I'll have a recording for the Patreon members of me playing the melody, so that you can learn it from that or any recording you want. And then I'm going to have some really, really basic key centers for you. So some sheets with, instead of all the chord changes, we're just going to go over those big key centers like we did last week, right? And your goal is, first of all, to work on your skill of playing over a tune with only key centers, right? And playing something meaningful without the security blanket of all the chord changes there. And then what we want to hear is that big color change from F up to A. Okay? So it's a 3-step process. It's learn the melody, start soloing, really focus in on that modulation from F to A. I'll have some backing tracks. I will have some trading tracks. I'll have all kinds of stuff over there for the Patreon members. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, we're a listener-supported podcast, which means, we don't do any ads. We just rely on jazz students like you that are getting something out of this and want access to more tools that will help you get to work on these ideas that I'm presenting you. And the way we do that is through a small monthly donation. You make the donation, you get a bunch of materials in return for that. We use the Patreon platform, so you can go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. All the information is over there. Once you get signed up, you get instant access, not only to this episode, but to every episode that we've ever done. The only favor I have to ask you is when you do sign up to become a patron, please do so on a web browser, whether that be on your computer or your phone. Just don't do it through the Patreon app on your phone, on an iOS device in particular, because I've been informed that Apple's going to take 30% of that donation in perpetuity. So if you want all of your tiny donation to go toward the actual creator, please just sign up in a web browser, whether that be on your phone or on your computer. And then, of course, you can sign in on the app and use the app freely. But that really helps us out a lot. We really just keep this thing going through your donations. And if 30% of all the donations are going to Apple, like they really need the money, that's going to be really tough for us to keep going. So we'd really appreciate that. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Have fun with this tune. It's a really, really classic standard that everybody should know. And hearing that modulation will really help to solidify it. And next week, we'll do one more tune with the same modulation in it. Hope you're all doing well out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.